Durvak's Legacy, Prologue. Distant droplets fell in the darkness. The dwarf's breathing came heavy and uneven. Metal scraped against stone with every step. Lower than ever before. It was the first thought that crossed his mind. The rock no longer carried the same scent as in the upper levels. Down here, the air was thicker, nearly motionless, steeped in an ancient dampness that did not come from water, but from the sheer weight of the earth itself. Each breath burned in his lungs. The dwarf pressed on with difficulty. Blood had dried along the fractures of his armor, darkening the metal, and some still remained fresh beneath his beard, sliding slowly toward his neck. His left arm no longer answered with the same firmness as before, and every step demanded an effort he could no longer disguise. It was not the first time he had descended this deep, but it was the first time he knew he would not return. He had gone farther than before. He felt it in his bones. The beasts could not be avoided forever. They could be eluded for a time, confused among echoes and branching tunnels, forced to chase shadows, but not indefinitely. In the deepest reaches of the abyss, patience belonged to other creatures. Only the axe had allowed him to come this far. He still carried it in his right hand, bracing it against the ground whenever his balance faltered. It was no common weapon. No dwarf would have made the mistake of calling it such. The metal did not reflect the scant light like ordinary steel. It seemed to drink it in and return it with a muted inner glow, steady and restrained, like embers that never fully die. It had been forged with all the primordial fire his people could gather. Not one flame, not 10, but generations of fire preserved, channeled, and bound within a single blade. When he raised it, the strength did not come from muscle alone. It came from something older, something that answered to blood. To the blood of the Dravern, that was its greatest virtue, and also its curse. The weapon had been born to protect, so that no enemy would ever again make the gates of his people tremble, so that the shadows would remember the earth had rightful keepers. But power never rests without cost. In time, the axe ceased to be mere defense. It became a symbol, an argument, a claim. Some invoked it to unite, others to assert dominion. Disputes spread around it like cracks in stone, placed under too much strain, and he could not allow those cracks to become chasms. Lumara had made that clear. There were only two paths: destroy it or hide it. To destroy it would have seemed simpler, to melt it once more in the very fire that had birthed it, to scatter its essence so completely that no one could ever gather it again. But both he and Lumara knew the same truth, though neither had spoken it aloud. The day would come when it would be needed. The day when the shadows would no longer be content to test the gates, but would seek to break them from within. The day when ordinary strength would not suffice. On that day, the relic would have to return. He stopped. The gallery into which he had stepped led nowhere visible. No branching passages, no echoes to suggest frequent passage. Only a wide natural chamber, upheld by irregular columns that resembled the bones of the earth itself. The floor was veined with ancient dark seams, and at its center a stone outcrop rose slightly from the ground, as though thrust upward by a forgotten force. He could go no farther, not without drawing behind him what followed. He set the axe against the central stone and straightened with the last remnant of dignity he possessed. There were no witnesses, no court, no chance, only the stone and the weight of the world. He lifted the axe with both hands. The metal answered with a deep vibration that coursed along his arms and anchored in his chest. Only the heir of the blood of the Dravern, he declared, his voice rough yet steady, born in the land of his ancestors, willing to protect his people from the creatures of shadow, and who seeks neither power nor glory, but only shelter for his own, shall be worthy to wield it. The silence that followed was not absolute. A faint pulse moved through the metal, barely perceptible, like the heartbeat of something bound within the forge. A dim radiance traced the blade's edge and vanished at once, as though the axe had recognized the words. It was not an explosion, it was acceptance. He brought the weapon down. The blade sank into the stone with a dry, final sound. Not a thunderclap, more a contained fracture, as if the rock had accepted the wound without resistance. The echo traveled along the gallery, and return, not as repetition, but as response. A distant blow, dull, heavy. The dwarf closed his eyes for a brief moment. He knew what it was. He knew where it came from, and he knew that now the creature knew where to find him. He drew one last steady breath. Then he unclasped the breastplate of his armor. The metal fell to the ground with a sound more human than heroic. He removed his crown and set it beside the axe, resting it against the base of the stone. He would not need symbols where he was going. He straightened his back, turned toward the corridor from which he had descended, and walked. Without haste, without fear, with the intact dignity of one who has fulfilled his final task. The darkness received him without resistance. Behind him, in the heart of the stone, the axe remained embedded, waiting.